Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Joint Custody, the Digital Assets Dialogues. I'm your host, Benjamin Duve, or Ben Duve, easier. I'm the Global Head of Partnerships at GK8 by Galaxy, former central banker, banking executive, and digital assets enthusiast. And I'm very excited today to have somebody I've spent quite some time with in my last first visit to Korea, Terry, to the podcast. Terry, maybe you want to do a short introduction.
Of course, Ben, thank you for inviting me to the joint custody. Very happy to be here and very happy to talk about what we're trying to do in Korea and how Korea is shaping up to be a very central venue in Asia and also globally for digital assets. Um, so my name is Terry Kim. I am the co-founder of BDACS. We are a fully licensed digital asset custodian in Korea, providing multi-asset custody services, global market access, staking, and reporting for institutions both in Korea and outside of Korea who are looking to build and execute their digital asset strategies in Korea, regionally, and globally.
Thanks, Terry. And yeah, a very interesting endeavor, I have to say. And Galaxy being a partner and GK8 being your tech provider, I mean, makes it a very close to my heart project, I have to say. Um, how did you get into, and that's the first question I ask everyone, and we always get different answers, but how did you get into digital assets and crypto? Was it like a pivotal moment for you that got you excited? What made you go into that arena?
Um, I think in Korea, especially, my story is a little bit unique. Before I started the company in 2022 with my co-founder, Harry, we both were attorneys at a global law firm here in Korea. And I was involved in regulatory compliance, advising traditional finance institutions. And it was really around, I think, 2017, latter part of 2017, when there was a bull market and a lot of traders and businesses first became introduced to the digital asset space in Korea because there was a massive bull run at the time. And so I had entrepreneurs, traditional finance clients who started asking me about digital assets and crypto. And at the time, it was still viewed as a very speculative asset. And so the advice was, the regulation is very unclear, the asset class is new. And so as an attorney, as an advisor, as a counsel, I advised them to just wait and see how the market develops. But as time went on, it became really clear to me, as I was getting fielded more questions in the digital asset space, that this was going to be a significant, a transformative industry going forward. And at the time, and still is to some extent, the digital asset space, the crypto space in Korea is very retail focused. But it was clear to me that as the market matured, not just in Korea, but globally, it was going to become much more institutionalized and regulated. And so I started looking at the landscape in Korea to see what sort of opportunities could be had. And even then, the exchange space was already dominated by Upbit, which is the largest uh, centralized venue exchange in Korea. And as the entire industry was becoming more institutionalized, I started looking at what sort of other infrastructure play would be important, and that's when I started looking at custody and how custodians can become that platform that can start supporting institutions as the entire space becomes much more regulated and regimented.
Yeah, and it's a key component, right? I mean, having run a custody business, I always have a little heart for the custody component in the value chain. But you're right. I think that that's one of the key aspects. You need that enablement to really drive institutional adoption. I mean, I've spent some time with you and with Harry. You just mentioned him in Korea. You guys seem to be a great team. I mean, one question, because I also always want to know a little bit more what's behind the story, how important that is that for your success? And the other question I have is, are you both crypto people? Are you digital assets people? Or maybe there's one more crypto and one more institutional, more digital assets, I would say. Um, and how does that pan out? I mean, two questions, interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So I met Harry while I was at the law firm. So he was a couple more years senior to me at the law firm. And when I started, he really kind of took me under his wings and really taught me about how to practice in Korea, and become much more um, acclimated to the law firm culture. And so I worked with Harry for a very long time. We were involved in several high-profile cases. And part of the reason why I think our partnership is so strong is because I've worked with Harry for such a long time in two different domains, one in law and now in business. And so there's a lot of synergies, a lot of complementary skill sets that we both bring. And I, of course, enjoy very much working with Harry. Um, this industry, as you know, is very new in Korea. There's it's a new asset class. It's a new industry, and regulation is really being developed in real time. And so the fact that I have somebody to talk to, somebody to kind of bounce ideas off of in real time, actually, is really what's, I think, helpful for me and what kind of allows us to kind of stay focused and chart our course as the landscape really evolves under our feet.
Let's go. And you both are crypto, you're a little bit more digital because I always make that distinction coming from a traditional bank, right? I think there's a pure crypto play, and then there is this wrapping assets in that new digital assets ecosystem, but much more regulated, much more, I call it the replatforming of the industry, right? Are you in both camps or are you in different camps? Is that part of a discussion or
Yeah, I think there's two kind of levels to that. As an asset, I think we have strong convictions in the crypto space, and as the entire space becomes much more regulated, we have strong interest and conviction in the digital asset space, whether that is in the security token side or in the RWA side. Um, but really, I think the fact that we both left the firm after being in the firm for almost over a decade, I think speaks to the fact that we both have a very strong conviction in the digital asset space, and so we see it as a broad industry asset, so crypto or digital assets. But really, in Korea right now, the focus is around the crypto space, and so as a business, we're really focused on supporting. Institutions execute on their crypto strategy. And as more regulations become clear, then we'll, of course, start expanding our products and capabilities to support on the broader digital asset supporting security tokens, which I think is going to happen next year. And with the stablecoin legislation, I think that's really going to kickstart the entire RWA conversation in Korea.
I had a lot of these discussions over the years, and I think the people who started with the digital asset securities bit never got the revenue streams they needed to build out their businesses, right? So my perspective, and I think you describe it for yourself as well, the crypto and the crypto enablement is the revenue stream that builds the company to then have the rails and also the runway to go deeper into the securities and the more re-platforming of the industry part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really the focus and how both retail and institutions in Korea became introduced to the entire digital asset space is through the centralized exchanges that principally trades crypto. And so when you're having conversations with the regulators, the lawmakers, and the stakeholders here, there, I think, focus is more on the crypto side, how they can become much more involved in crypto, how can they onboard with the centralized exchanges, and how they can leverage the growing capabilities and the broadening capabilities in the digital asset space to be much more involved in the crypto space rather than in the broader the digital asset ecosystem.
I agree. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So we had a great event together, BDACS and Galaxy, and during that event, it was a violin concert. Your grandfather's Gallardo violin was played, right? A very historic instrument. So that influence of tradition, like, and learning from the past, um, how does that play into you're trying to reshape and create also something because the instrument you can still play today, right? Create something that is long and lasting, right? I think it's a very interesting piece, right? Do you want to, I assume you want to create an asset class that's also there for future generations. And how do you see that learning from the past while in very truly embracing the future from your perspective as a company and personally, of course?
Yeah, the concert with my grandfather's Galliano, it was uh, an idea that I really got from the Galaxy team. If you recall, in February of this year, during Consensus Hong Kong, Galaxy partnered with Animoca, where they brought the Stradivarius violin, the Empress Katerina. And that really resonated with me, exactly to your point, where you have this very traditional instrument and you're reframing it in the digital asset space. And so after I visited Hong Kong, I wanted to do something creative during Korea Blockchain Week, and it really was a no-brainer for me to replicate something a concert with a very historic instrument. And so we of course brought in the Stradivarius, graciously donated loaned to us by Animoca Brands, and we brought our family's Galliano, which was in our family for many decades, and we had the event, which was very well attended. But I think from a thematic standpoint, uh, combining learning from the past and applying what we learned in a new industry is something that's a very important theme in Korea. If you look at Korea as an industry, as a country, as an industry powerhouse, you see brands like Hyundai, Samsung, that has really originated in Korea, but now is has become a global brand catering to uh, users around the world. Now, if you think about the industry, it's very clear that Korea is very export driven, very outward looking from Korea. But if you also then look at the financial sector, you see a very different story. You don't see any Korean financial services company operating regionally or globally. And there's a reason for that, because the policymakers here in Korea specifically divided the industry into two different uh, verticals. One in the industry on the manufacturing side, which, as I mentioned, is much more outward looking, and the financial sector, which is very inward looking. And so, if you look at the policies and the law and the rules and the regulations around the financial services industry, it's really tailored to support their initiatives in country rather than the financial services companies expanding beyond their borders. And that's why Korea has a very strong capital currency restrictions. That's why you don't see many global financial services companies operating in Korea. And when we're now looking at the digital asset space, I think the regulators and the lawmakers are still of the mindset that digital asset regulations should be inward looking because digital asset as a new asset class is fundamentally a financial services sector. And so when we're out here as a custodian and working with the regulators trying to build out the platform, I think it's very important for us to recognize where the regulations are coming from and how the lawmakers are seeing financial services sector developing as they're embracing the digital asset as a new financial instrument. Now, at the same time, the challenge with digital assets is that it's not local, it's cross-border, it's global, it operates 24, 7 days a week. And so we have to reconcile the fact that we're working with a global asset class, while at the same time we're working with regulators who are trying to implement the traditional mindset of keeping the financial industry and the rules and regulation very specific to Korea. And that's how I think the excitement is when we're dealing with the regulators and we're trying to build a regional and global business while also kind of looking back at the history of how the financial services sector developed in Korea as we're building out a new digital asset ecosystem.
Yeah, and BDACS is an absolute front runner in Korea, right? And with Galaxy and GK of close partners of yours, we're really happy to accompany on you on your journey, right? You touched a little bit on that regulatory discussion, and we've seen, and I've seen quite a few ones, being also a former central banker, quite a few of these discussions globally. Tell us a little bit, and I think you also have in this perspective because we talked about it because you look also outside and to compare what's outside to bring also that insight to your regulator in Korea. Tell us a little bit, how did you manage to move the market forward? How did you manage to be such a pivotal player, right? Were there certain strategies that helped you there, and how do you see Korea now advance in that global context? You touched a little bit on it already. Like, do you see Korea embracing more outward-looking financial industries, also from a regulatory side? And maybe give some perspectives there because it's very difficult from the outside to get these. And I think there's very few people as well apt to discuss these as you are.
Absolutely. Korea, I think, is as a country is very unique in the digital asset in the digital asset sphere. It's a developed country. It has strong rule of law. The regulations and the rules are being developed in a very structured way. But at the same time, there's enormous domestic demand for digital assets. And so if you're looking at Korea regionally, if you're looking at Korea globally, it's an important jurisdiction to have duplicate capabilities. Traditionally, if you look at Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan were at the front of how digital asset developed, but Korea was really a black box to your point because it was really difficult for offshore entities, foreign entities, to come in and start operating in Korea, even though the market itself was tremendous. For instance, in February or March of this year, the trading volume on our centralized exchanges in the crypto exceeded our equities market. And this is just from retail volume. And so as a market, I think Korea is a very interesting place to be. And there should be more interest in Korea as the market is finally opening up to institutions and offshore entities starting to expand their footprint into Korea. Um, and I think that's where custody becomes very important because traditionally, as I mentioned, exchanges really dominated the conversation around crypto and digital assets because that was really the only major infrastructure that was available in Korea. And because of that, because the exchanges really played all the major roles in the digital asset sector, they were the trading venue, they served as the custodians, and they served as the market makers. Um, the entire space around
Facing their own
custody,
clients, right? That's always the tricky one.
exactly.
Facing their own clients while knowing their positions, right? That's always a tricky one in traditional markets for sure.
Yes, and I think the regulators are very aware of that. And so there's a concerted effort right now under this administration, under this financial regulatory body, to start separating out the functionalities that the exchanges have really dominated and consolidated over the last 10 years as more institutions are entering into the digital asset space. Um, Now, because there was such a concentration of roles and responsibilities and capabilities with the centralized exchanges, custodians, validators, and all of the other important digital asset infrastructure didn't really have opportunity to grow in the way that they've grown outside of Korea, let's say for the North in the United States or in Europe. Now, there were custodians, and there are custodians in Korea, uh, started in 2019, 2020. But their business model, because the exchanges were so dominant, was really to receive the exchange's balance rather than providing additional value add services to the clients who are actually keeping their assets in custody. And so when we started the company, of course, we spent a lot of time with Galaxy and some of the market leaders outside of Korea on how custodians are supposed to develop, what sort of value that custodians have to provide institutions that is separate and apart from what centralized exchanges provide. And that really kind of understanding of how custodians developed outside of Korea was really instrumental in how we started building out our capabilities from the ground up. And so I think there's a fundamental shift in how custodians operate rather than as a basin for receiving the centralized exchanges balance, but rather taking the assets from the clients and working with the exchanges as one of the key market access points to enable clients to use custody as a regulated deployment platform for their assets rather than just being as a passive vault for digital assets. And that, I think, fundamental difference in perspective allowed us to really move forward very quickly in the market and really control a lot of the narratives around how custodians are supposed to develop and how custodians are supposed to add value to institutional clients, both in Korea and outside of Korea.
Very interesting. Yeah, I assume you're the one experience I had in Korea. You come in and you don't really have Uber. You don't really use Google Maps. You use a local app, Cow Tea and the maps and the Cow Taxi, Kakao Taxi, and all of those topics. But your ambition, if as I understand you, you don't want to be that only Korea niche, but you want to grow out of your market into at least a regional, if not a global player.
Yes, and I think that uh, is the dichotomy that I was talking about earlier with our traditional finance services sector in Korea, which was really kind of inward looking and built to service Korean domestic clients rather than offshore entities who are looking to come into Korea, or for Korean institutions to start looking outside of Korea to expand their footprint. Of course, as a regulated digital asset custodian in Korea, it's important for us to win this market, and I think we're moving very quickly in that direction. Again, because of the capabilities that we're building out that allows institutions to use us as a capital deployment venue. But by nature, digital assets moves cross-border, it moves regionally, globally, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it's important for us to provide those capabilities for institutions who are rapidly understanding the different nature of how digital assets move and how digital assets are, again, much more regional and global. Because the asset managers in Korea, of course, they're very accustomed to working in Korea, but as they become much more attuned to the digital assets, there's going to be opportunities regionally and globally that by nature digital asset ecosystem provides, and we have to be in a position to support the regional and global operations. And so for countries that have strong custodians and strong infrastructure, we work very closely through partnerships so that we can establish regulated rails that allows both in-country and outside of the country clients to move their assets in a very frictionless manner. And for those countries that are in the early stages of building out their regulated digital asset infrastructure, we also consider going into those countries and actually expanding our own capabilities cross-border. And one of those countries is Vietnam. In September, we entered into a JV with a very strong player in Vietnam to become one of the first digital asset custodians that will provide regulated market access through BDACS and our partners in Vietnam to the Vietnam market, which is very, very similar if you think about it in terms of demographics to Korea.
Yeah, and as a beacon industrial powerhouse in the region, I mean, it lends itself that you also become a beacon digital assets powerhouse as Korea, right? I think that's the thing. I think everybody, when they look into the region, it's one of the key players in the region is Korea. Naturally, that's an opportunity as well with strong rule of law, well regulated. I mean, that always is a true competitive advantage in the financial industry. So naturally, looking at BDACS a bit more, you want to grow assets under custody. You seem to be on track, and I see so incredibly enthusiastic retail, which means they will also probably invest in more institutional products that then go back into you as an institutional custodian. And I have to say, I've never seen, I'm newer to crypto. I've never seen so many people line up for the next airdrop of something, an NFT or a token drop. So that was super fascinating to see. But you're more institutional focused. So when you look at the evolution of BDACS, and you just mentioned already JVs outside of the countries, what are the milestones in the next 1 or 2 years? Maybe give us a little bit an outlook and maybe a vision, right? I mean, we don't have to even tie it down to what's your vision? I mean, you're the founder together with Harry, right? So what would be your dream scenario also down the road? Where would you see yourself in a few years, maybe even?
Korea is at an inflection point, I think, in the digital asset story. Under this administration, the entire space is changing very rapidly. And in fact, this administration ran on the platform that they're going to be very pro digital assets and increase the market access to allow this industry to grow at an accelerated pace. Um, and so, from my standpoint, and from our company's standpoint, this is a very important period of time. And there's four major opportunities that we see in the next 12 to 24 to 36 months. One is institutional participation. For the first time in Korea's 10-year history in the digital asset space, institutions will now have the green light to actively participate in trading digital assets, in creating digital asset crypto products and services, and actually holding on to digital assets on their balance sheets. And so to be able to support institutions as they're coming into the digital asset space for the first time is an exciting opportunity for us. Two is stablecoins. Stablecoins are widely used in Korea. In fact, I think on a daily transaction volume, about 30% of the transaction is stablecoin to Korean won pair. And I think about 5 now to 7% of uh, trade settlement in Korea is happening through stablecoins. And so supporting stablecoins, being much more involved in that conversation as a custodian, supporting businesses who may not be involved in day-to-day trading, but actually in using stablecoins is, again, an important part that custodians, I think, have to play. And that's where we want to be a central player. Korean won stablecoin, again, is part of this administration's agenda. And we ourselves became the first digital asset service provider in Korea to issue a fully backed Korean won stablecoin in partnership with our bank, Worry Bank, and expanding on the capabilities of the Korean won stablecoin is, I think, another very important milestone for us going into 2026. And finally, the melding of the traditional finance with the digital asset space is really highlighted in spot ETFs. Korea is on track to create and launch Bitcoin spot ETFs and perhaps even other digital asset in 2026. And the asset managers, when they're first coming into this space, I think one of the low-hanging fruits, one of the things that really gets them exciting is the ETFs. So we're working very closely with the asset managers, the banks, and the security firms to frame out what that workflow is going to look like. And so, from a product standpoint, from a milestone standpoint, I think providing the robust capital deployment platform for institutions, supporting stable coins and on a broad scale, and support working with the asset managers and the traditional finance institutions in creating a very robust spot ETFs in Korea is really on our roadmap and key milestones for the next 2 to 4 years. And as we continue to do that, we'll be expanding regionally to support the regional operations of global companies, both in Korea and outside of Korea. And so, as I mentioned, indicated a few times already, Korea is at that inflection point and really excited to be at this point in time, providing the kind of the infrastructure that's necessary to help the digital asset space scale in Korea.
Well, I think that's the perfect final sentence as we're coming to the end of the episode. It's a great for us to be a partner of such a dynamic company who truly seems to shape the region, Korea and the region. So thank you for joining us, Terry. Thank you to the audience for listening. Join us also the next time if you want to. And I can't promise I always get Korea and Asia friendly times, but if you like this one, you might be able to see a recording down the road as well. Thank you for joining, Terry, and everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ben, for having me. All right.